Hi and welcome back to my channel. Do you find the tone curve complicated to understand? If you do, well, you're not alone, as I can say that I did when I first started. But by the end of this video, you'll have the ability to master the tone curve and elevate your editing skills to the next level. But just a quick outline of the tone curve itself. It's a powerful tool that allows you to adjust the brightness and contrast of your images with precision. And you can also adjust the RGB colours within the tone curve panel, allowing a level of colour grading for your image. So let's get to it. So here we are in Lightroom, and this is the image I want to adjust. As you can see that it's quite underexposed here, but I'm not too worried because I'll be lifting the shadows in the basic setting panel. Up here, because I want to preserve the highlights, because I had to expose for the sky and it was handheld, so I couldn't do exposure bracketing. So we start off with just explaining this histogram. It's basically a representation of the tonal values within your image. So you've got your blacks, your shadows, your midtones, your highlights and your whites. And this is quite an important reference to use when you're making adjustments in your image. So what I want to do first is just change or just check the white balance to make sure the camera got it right, because I leave mine in auto white balance on the camera. So I set at 600 at the moment, so we just go over to an area where it's as close to 46% as possible. Now I did do a video on this and I'll put the link above, all about white balance and its adjustment. The next thing I go is into my shadows and lift the shadows now, and lift the blacks. So that's given me quite a nice range now. You can see the histogram has changed, put some more values in the midtones, and lifted away from the blacks and now more into the shadows. So I'm quite happy with that. That is now ready to go into the tone curve. So with the tone curve, let's start off with explaining the input and output values here. First of all, I'll put my picker back. Okay, let's open up tone curve again. So you have input and output values. So the input values is as set from adjusting, say, in the basic what I've just did. That represents the histogram in the background, which won't change when you make any changes here. This is just a snapshot representation of what you've already changed previously in other panels, or as it came in from the camera and you didn't make any changes. And then you've got your output. Your input value is what that represents, your histogram there. And your output value is what you're going to change on your point curve and all the other settings of here. So you have 5 panels that you can choose from. 3 color panels that I'll go through later, but it will concentrate on these 2 panels that affect your contrast and your highlights. So first things first, let's go to this linear point curve, which is Lightroom give you 2 presets, a medium contrast and a strong contrast that you can use. You can either make a change there, or you can go into strong contrast there. And you can choose that as a baseline to move forward. You can see the image has changed. Or you can say, well, no, I'm not happy with them. I'll make my own changes, for which you can do. And I'll show you this trick that I use because I've got quite close highlights there. I want to preserve that. I don't want to change these areas. So what I'm going to do is just anchor that point there, and then also I want to preserve the shadows at this point here, and I want to anchor point that level. So I know that between these 2 levels I've protected and preserved those ranges. Now I can create an S-curve between those ranges and create contrast within that. So you can see that now I'm making changes on the S-curve that's preserving the highlights that I want to protect. So that's a really good way of doing it, and you can do that quite well. So that's what I like to do, and that's the point curve. And you have to be very careful. Small adjustments will make big differences, so you want to be really careful what you're doing. So the input was 86 on this level, and I've reduced it to 80, so not much. Again, if I highlight that, you can tell my input was 54 and my output was 161. So not a big amount. So subtle changes make a big difference because you're going to build on that throughout your editing on the other layers. So the next thing is the parametric curve, which is independent of the point curve. It won't adjust anything in this panel at all. It will obviously adjust your image. And this basically is a broader adjustment of the highlights and shadows. And you can you can change the range here by using these sliders. So you can increase your dark tone areas here. And you can then bring up your shadows a wider range and say, well, I want to bring up a wider range or a narrower range. And you can say, well, no, that's too much, and then bring it down. And just make smaller adjustments in the lower end, preserving the upper end. Excuse me, but it is a broader adjustment. So you can see this grey area. If you adjust this region here, you can see that it's going to make a big change on that. So you just go to reset regions. And to be honest with you, I don't hardly touch this because my point curve makes the adjustments enough for me, but it is an option you can have if you want to say lift more shadows. You can do that and bring up the shadows a bit more in this area if you want to. And you can either use the point curve or the sliders to make those changes. You can see that you can use the sliders to do the same thing, which may seem more precise if you want to do that. So it's pretty good options you got on these panels here. So that's that's your parametric and your point curve, basically how you adjust them as well. So there's lots of options you can have. And I've gone over where you can save. You can save a preset as well, so you can make a saving. So if you like what you just did there and you want to preserve it for other similar images you took that time, then you can save it as a preset, point curve, daytime 1, daytime 1. And then you can save that as a preset, and that can now be saved for you to adjust future changes. So if you can go through your colour range now. So with the colour range, you can do slight colour adjustments here and colour grading, where you have your primary colours at the top angle there. You can see your green and your blue. Your second colour range on the bottom. So you have your yellow, your magenta, and your cyan at the bottom there. So when you go into the red, you say, well, I want a little bit more warmth in the higher range highlights. So you bring that up there, but I want to take it away from my shadows, and then you can bring it down. So you can make some adjustments there and just create some contrast in the colours. Again, with the greens, you say, well, I'll bring up the greens there, but I want to take them down in the shadows. And you start to make some differences and slight changes. And you can see there's not, in this point here, there's not a big difference. And then your input values up there as well. And you can say the blues I want up there. And again, into the yellows there. So you make these slight changes, and you can say, well, at mid-tones, I want a bit more warmth in there as well. So you can just make some slight changes, create some style into the image. So there you are with all the changes that you can make with the tone curve. And it's a very powerful tool, but you have to be very subtle with this change. So then let's go back into the custom and make a full saving of that preset, because now you've done the changes of all across, you can now save a full preset and just call it daytime 2, for instance. Daytime 2. So now this will incorporate the changes you've made on your colour panel as well. So that will save that as a preset. So this is such a good tool to use as a baseline to go further down through your colour grading. So you set that there, you set your contrast, And now you can go back into your basic and say you want to now make some changes to your texture or your clarity, dehaze or vibrance, and just make some intense changes if you want to do that. But look at the tone curve and see what big difference you've made to that. So you can see that the subtle changes you've just made has made a big difference to the image. So this is the final edit I've done with this image. And I made some changes to the HSL colour, obviously, because you go down the panels and the colour grading wheels. Do some final edit there. But when you turn off the tone curve, you can see the big difference. It still looks a little flat. But when you turn that on and the changes you've made there, you can see how much detail's in there and the depth that you create in that image. So I'm really pleased about that. And it just shows how powerful the tone curve is and how you can use it to improve your images. So that's it with the tone curve. As you can see, it's such a powerful tool to make some changes to your image, and you can use it to really good effect and really hone in some changes, subtle changes, rather than make big changes like using the contrast tool in the basic panel. This really can make minute changes and protect certain areas of the image you don't want to change. So that's why it's such a good tool to use. And I really do hope that you've learned something from this video and got some value from it. And if you have, hit that subscribe button, press the like button and the notification bell for future uploads, and put some comments in below for anything I might have missed or you felt I might have missed, or any feedback to me regarding this video, and I'll be really pleased to hear from you. So you take care and have a really good day.